usually sell well, do they? And that's been the criticism of fans of not being able to recoup large amounts of money. If you look at someone like Chelsea, look what they sold Conor Gallagher for, look what they sold Kai Havertz for, look what they sold Mason Mount for, you know, players, Lewis Hall, etc., etc. So there's so many other examples of clubs selling players. They've either come through the academy or been bought and sold for a higher price that Manchester United don't seem to do they, Dave?
I think one of the big problems as well, you look at the last time they made transfer profit was on Dan James, around 10 million, compared to the players you just mentioned there. It's massive. But I think the big thing with Garnacho right now, you know, Manchester United are 15th in the Premier League. They are in a relegation battle. There's a massive game this evening where you look at someone like Garnacho in terms of his profile and where he could play. He could even be positioned as a wing-back in these games where Man United have got the ball, taking teams on. Defensively, as Ruben Amorim spoke about, he's improving. He's always been quite an active defender, maybe positionally at times a little bit lazy, something that he's starting to add to his game. But then you add the attack inside as well. This, for me, Liv, is too little in terms of the cash. It's got to be more than that. 59 million, it's derisory.
No deal.
The difference, though, between what Flex was saying there about other teams selling well and United not selling well, I think the difference is those other teams that have sold well, they believe that those players were no longer going to have an impact on their team, and that's enabled them, because of the experience they've had around the first team, to sell them on at a good price. Now, the difference with Garnacho is that many United supporters would see him as a player that can impact the team right now and in the future and improve that first 11. So, from United's point of view, do they want to potentially let go essentially what is a first-team player here, not a youngster coming through that's had a bit of experience and maybe they can sell on for a profit? This is a player who is a bona fide first-team player.
And I think that's the big thing when we're looking at players in and around Europe under the age of 21. Garnacho is up there with the best, or even first. And if we look at the last 3 seasons of European football, there he is, number one, above the likes of Yamal, Savinho, Jeremy Gittins, who's having a great season with Borussia Dortmund, or Moukoko, who, again, is a wonder kid if you play Football Manager. That's the statistics. That's in all competitions in the last 3 seasons. Number one. This is why 59 million is too little.
Yeah, I see what Dave's saying about the price. But the other point you have to look at, right, is how Ruben Amorim sees this and how Alejandro Garnacho fits into his system. Because there's one thing waiting for a player to develop, etc., etc. But if, and I'm not saying this is the case, but if Ruben Amorim saw him as somebody who didn't necessarily fit into the system, or for worse, you sold Garnacho and replaced him with a player who's worse, then that's not going to help either.
Yeah, I mean, you teed me up perfectly there, Flex, because United head coach Ruben Amorim thinks he has a big future at the club.
That is clear. He has talent. He needs to learn to play a little bit in a different position. He needs to play better inside. He improves a lot the recovering position when he doesn't have the ball. But doing that, sometimes he's not in the right place to make transition like he was in the past, because I prefer to defend and then build up with all the team to reach the final third. So he's finding the best way to play in this system. Is improving. Is improving during training. So he started the last game. Let's see.
Let's see from Ruben Amorim. I think he's made it pretty clear that he has a big future at the club. Flex, you mentioned about replacements. I mean, this is, you know, a youngster in Europe that's got the best numbers for under 21 players. He is going to be very difficult to replace, isn't he? And you're probably not going to get a similar sort of player in terms of age and longevity in Alejandro.
Well, in terms of the stats that Dave just presented to us, you're clearly not going to find someone his age doing better than that, because he's top in those metrics. It's whether Manchester United, and this is an if they replaced him and got a ready-made player who could fit the system now. Because Ruben Amorim just spoke about he's adapting, he's learning, etc., etc. Let's say that if you said to Manchester United fans, OK, we're going to sell Alejandro Garnacho, sorry, Wolves fans, I'm just hypothetical here, and said, we're going to bring in Matheus Cunha right now. He's 25, so he's 5 years older. I understand that. But what a player. He'd be ready to fit this system right now, hit the ground running, and you would assume that he would be really good in that position.
I think that's probably the number one target from a Premier League option. And Manchester United should look at the market more. You know, you go back to the Fergie teams, the amount of times Man United bought the best player in the league, came to Old Trafford, added a bit of value there. But I think one player that would fit into the system, that plays in a similar system, in a similar role, Florian Wirtz is an obvious one. He's going to go to a very, very big club in the next few seasons. Obviously, the work that he's done at Bayer Leverkusen, winning the league title, going unbeaten in the season, but the assists, top of assists in Europe last season, a creative player to get on to get in that sort of role with Bruno Fernandes, with Amad Diallo. That's a player that instantly would improve Manchester United, but that's 120 million euros you're going to spend. So what Man United are selling Garnacho for now, you're not going to get a like for like in terms of the profile, the age, what they can do on the pitch.
I think United are probably going to have to be realistic about what market they're shopping in now. Are they going to be able to get a Wirtz? Because, make no mistake, there's going to be clubs in a much better position than United that are going to be trying to find these players. The other thing is, Garnacho's played under different managers, and United have tended to play a lot of transitional football over the last couple of years. It's going to take him time to be moulded into what Amorim wants. So who's to say that next season Garnacho's not going to explode and have an unbelievable season at Manchester United? It's just going to take him maybe a little bit of time to work out, this is my role within this team, this is what the manager's asking me to do, and this is a new way that United are playing. And Amorim said himself, this isn't the final version of this United team. This is going to be an evolution, and it's easier to kind of sort out a little bit the defensive side of things first, and the attacking wise is going to come next. So maybe it just needs a little bit of patience from all sides here on Garnacho.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, Alejandro Garnacho? Now, despite being 16 days into the transfer window, we are still awaiting news on Marcus Rashford's future. His reps are in talk with United over how a potential deal would look, but we'll keep you up to date on that one. Just one question, and we've spoken about Marcus Rashford a lot. I mean, Dave, do you think come transfer deadline day, we're still going to be talking about this Marcus Rashford situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's possible. It feels a lot of similarities towards what happened with Jadon Sancho, where initially there was talk about a permanent transfer, a loan with option, a loan with obligation, and now we're into the kind of straight loan territory because the loaning clubs and interested clubs probably can't really afford to gamble, and I think it is a gamble when you're signing Marcus Rashford right now. So it feels a bit like the Jadon Sancho situation, and that went right down to the wire. So it feels like it could well be the same here.
Yes, right to Brighton now, because they have expressed an interest in signing centre-back Tosin from Chelsea. Tosin, of course, moved to Stamford Bridge on a free transfer in the summer. It's unclear at this stage whether Chelsea would be prepared to let him leave. Dave, suddenly out of favour. He was playing a little bit when Wesley Fofana got injured, but 18-year-old Josh Achiampong has started over him in the last couple of games. So could this move benefit Tosin? Will he be looking to leave Chelsea so soon after signing?
Yeah, and don't forget, Chelsea worked really hard to get Tosin into the club. There was at one stage where we thought he was going to sign for Newcastle. They pushed really hard for him in the summer, and Chelsea put in a lot of groundwork in order to get that deal done at the end of his contract with Fulham. So, having offered him a 4-year contract, I feel like it feels a bit soon for perhaps the player to say, well, I'm going to go and find another challenge somewhere else. But at the same time, when you've got an 18-year-old coming into the team ahead of you, then I think you probably do have to ask a few questions. Now, I know there were question marks over Achiampong's future, and now he signed that new contract. Maybe the club feel like they need to give him a bit more of an opportunity. So maybe Tosin's time will come again. But the fact that they're recalling Chalobah, maybe that will restrict minutes further. And when you've got an upwardly mobile club like Brighton looking at you, maybe he would feel like that would be a challenge that he would be ready to accept. But it feels very soon.
And obviously, Dave just mentioned Chalobah, obviously recalled from his loan at Crystal Palace. Surely, if Chelsea are recalling him, there has been, Maresca's gone back and forth between different centre-back partners for Levi Colwill. Does this mean that Chalobah's going to come straight back into the starting 11 then, perhaps, Fletch?
Well, I think he's got a great chance of doing that because it's so unsettled in that area for Chelsea. They haven't managed to find the perfect partner for long enough. Of course, Fofana has been that player, but he's had his problems of injury and now is out for longer. I think Axel Disasi at times has struggled, and so has Badiashile. And you're talking about what's his name again? Achiampong?
Achiampong.
Yeah, he's come in and signed a new deal. But like you said, they're probably not going to thrust him in and say you're going to start every single game for Chelsea at this stage. And Enzo Maresca is no stranger to sort of making sure everybody knows what he wants and how he wants his team to play. So I think bringing back Chalobah, I do feel a bit sorry for Trevor Chalobah in terms of some of the treatment that he's had and how he left the club, having come through the ranks. He's trying to probably get settled at Palace and reignite his career after having a bit of a stagnation. Now finds himself coming back, but obviously with the review to stay, he still has a chance to move in the summer as well. So I think he's got a really good chance of continuing to play football for Chelsea when he comes back, because they need that.
Yeah. Right, before we get to the break, just a bit of news to bring you. Celtic and Ajax are keen on Real Valladolid's winger, Raul Moro. We understand there's been no approach yet from either club, with the La Liga side reluctant to sell. Right, next we're heading to West Ham, who want a striker, and we'll be at Leicester's training ground, who are in need of a win. Will Ruud van Nistelrooy be active in this window? Regards Manchester City, they have been active in this transfer window so far. Vitor Reis is expected to fly into the UK to finalise his move to the club. They've agreed a deal with Palmeiras worth £29.4 million. He is a centre-back and he will be joining Manchester City. Right, let's get to West Ham now. They've been linked with at least 5 strikers. Michael Bridge is at the club's training ground for us. I mean, Michael, they've got a lot of options, so who are they?
Oh, Olivia, it's quite a list, but that's what happens in the January window when you want to make changes to the squad, when you are looking for that exact player. I'm not saying it's the exact striker. There might be a striker who is a different kind of player, but Evan Ferguson's the one we keep hearing mentioned. We know there was reports a few months ago that Brighton might loan Ferguson out, and if they decide to do so, we'd imagine West Ham would be interested as well. There's Rodrigo Muniz as well, the Fulham forward, who's just fallen down the pecking order ever so slightly. We've got Ivan Guessan from Nice, Andre Silva from Leipzig. So I don't usually like looking down, Olivia, but it's quite a list when there's West Ham players, but they want to bring in a striker for Graham Potter. Of course, Lucas Paquetá played as a false 9, didn't he, on Tuesday night in that win against Fulham. And they scored 3 goals as well. Of course, there was that unfortunate incident for Mikel Antonio, and hopefully get an update on him this afternoon from Graham Potter. So we do know West Ham are after a striker, and I'm sure they'll make a final decision soon and bring one in.
What else can we expect then in Graham Potter's first window? Because January is always hard, let alone when you've only just joined the club.
Yeah, look, I think he's inherited a good squad. Let's be honest here. You know, they made a number of changes in the summer. OK, it didn't really work out for Julian Lopetegui, but it's not as if they're bottom of the league. They've gone above Spurs. They're mid-table at the moment. It could be a really good season still for West Ham United. As I say, they scored 3 goals as well. But Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall is another player that's been mentioned. I mentioned the strikers, but of course Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall hasn't totally worked out for him so far at Chelsea. So a striker and a midfielder would be of interest as well. Understanding is probably no outgoings as well. There's talk about 1 or 2 maybe, so we'll get more on that this afternoon from Graham Potter. We'll be speaking to him around 2 o'clock. But as I say, he's inherited a pretty decent squad here. He seemed very happy the other night. We'll see if he's happy this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now, one of those names mentioned there, Statman, is Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. Obviously, like Michael says, it hasn't quite worked out from at Chelsea. He's injured at the moment. But do you think that this could be quite a good fit?
I think so. I think with Graham Potter, when you look at the midfielders he's worked with previously, one jumps out when you're thinking about Dewsbury-Hall, and that's Alexis McAllister, a player that could play 6, 8, 10, very technical, very good on the ball. And similar to Dewsbury-Hall at Leicester City, he played a number of roles in there. You know, at times he was playing as an 8, moving into attacking midfield. Sometimes he'd start attacking midfield. We've got to remember his numbers in the Championship were really, really good. 12 goals, 14 assists in 44 Championship games. He's a player for me that would work in a Graham Potter system, similar to Paquetá, technical, be able to play in loads of different roles. So I like that transfer if it goes through.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for Dewsbury-Hall, I think, to get back into that Chelsea midfield. Obviously playing in the Conference League, but he'll, of course, want to be playing more than that. Then back to the striker chat, Flex, because there was a few names mentioned there. But the way that Graham Potter likes to play football, we've seen it at Brighton, we saw it little bits at Chelsea as well. Which one of those strikers do you think is best suited to the way West Ham are going to want to play?
I really do like the sound of the Evan Ferguson link, and there's a few reasons why. Firstly, because he feels a little bit like the forgotten man in terms of forgotten youngster, in terms of, last couple of seasons, especially last year as well, scoring goals, looking like he's going to be on the cusp of something big, and the big 6 team's going to come in for him, etc., etc. Huge sums of money, and I spent some time talking to some Brighton fans about that, and I actually said at the time, no, he's best staying here. He's not the guy everybody thinks he is yet. Since then, he's struggled with injuries, and of course, Brighton have been fantastic with the likes of Danny Welbeck and João Pedro, and he's struggled to get into the team. But I think Evan Ferguson, when Graham Potter was there and had an Evan Ferguson type, I think he would have fit that mould absolutely perfectly. Of course, Muniz at Fulham has shown he's a strong, competent striker. Not a high-volume scorer. Did have a purple patch last season, but proved he can link play. And that's more of the maybe, like if David Moyes was still at West Ham, the big striker up front in the sort of mould of maybe an upgrade on Mikel Antonio. So, but I think that Evan Ferguson one jumps out and would probably be the most exciting.
What's really interesting is when you look at the appearances that Graham Potter gave to Brighton players. Lewis Dunk was number 1, Trossard was number 2, and Neil Maupay was number 3. A hard-working striker scored 26 goals in 101 games under Graham Potter. So that's something that Evan Ferguson's got, that's something that Evan Ferguson can do, but we all know that star quality. Keep thinking about that hat-trick versus Newcastle. One of the best we've seen in recent years in the Premier League. The ceiling is big, and I think, Evan Ferguson's a player that Graham Potter would love to work with.
We'll keep you up to date on that one. Right, Leicester are on a really bad run of form. Let's get to the club's training ground then and speak to Kirsty Edwards. She's there for us. Kirsty, another defeat last night. How much pressure is on Ruud van Nistelrooy right now?
Yeah, really concerning position right now for Leicester, second from bottom, and as you say, a concerning run of form as well. 6 straight defeats now in the Premier League. In that time, they've conceded 16 and only scored 2, so issues at both ends of the pitch for Ruud van Nistelrooy to try to sort out, with Fulham coming up this weekend. It has to be said, it's been quite a cruel run of fixtures really for Van Nistelrooy. In those 6 games, they've faced Liverpool, Newcastle, Aston Villa, Man City. They also faced Wolves side, who Vitor Pereira had just taken over, and they were having that little new manager bounce as well. So, yeah, it's been a tough run of fixtures. They've got to turn things around, though. Some positives for them to hang on to. Despite being second from bottom, it is still so tight down there at the bottom end of the table. So they're only 2 points away from safety still. And, of course, we learnt this week that no clubs facing any issues this time around over PSR. And that would have been a huge relief for a lot of Leicester fans, because there'd been so much speculation that they would face charges again this January. So, yeah, some positives to hang on to, but they've got to turn things around quickly.
I'm sure those Leicester fans, Kirsty, will be wanting to know if they can expect any further activity in this window.
Yeah, well, of course, they got that right back in that they've been after this month yesterday. Woyo Coulibaly confirmed he was at the King Power Stadium. Ruud van Nistelrooy spoke about him afterwards. He talked about him being a powerful player, good with his feet, and talked about the qualities he'll add to his sides. Interestingly, it was actually the... Sorry, I'm losing my place here. I'm so cold. I can't tell you. I can't even think. But yeah, interestingly, the current Chelsea manager was the one who signed him for Parma, and Van Nistelrooy spoke last night about talking to him. So he comes with good recommendations. But in terms of the other players, they are looking to bring in a centre half, still top of their list. So we'll talk to Van Nistelrooy about that today, and also a winger as well, and perhaps even a striker, because as I say, they are struggling for goals so much at the moment. Tom Cannon has returned from his loan deal at Stoke, but it looks like that might be in terms of him going out on a permanent deal. So another thing to talk to Ruud van Nistelrooy today, as I look to get out of this freezing cold weather we've got here right now at the Leicester City training ground. I'm going to get inside, get ready to speak to him in his press conference and hear from him this lunchtime ahead of the game against Fulham this weekend.
Kirsty, go and get inside and get warm. Thank you so much. All right, coming up, we'll be live to Paris to speak to French football expert Jonathan Johnson. Could we see a potential domino effect of transfers? Start off with Kvaratskhelia. It feels like this move could have a knock-on effect with regards to Alejandro Garnacho potentially replacing him at Napoli. What can you tell us about that move to PSG?
Yeah, this is one that's really developed in the last couple of days, and now it seems like PSG are on the verge of being able to complete that deal. Quite a big transfer in terms of your regular winter windows, but this is one that has been speculated about for some time. And I think after the first half of the season in Naples, it was made clear that Kvaratskhelia would favour a move away. That interest was still there from PSG. So, like you said, Napoli now looking at options to potentially replace him, and PSG expecting to be able to be in a position to confirm him officially, possibly within the next couple of days and certainly before the end of the week.
So if Kvaratskhelia does get confirmed, does that mean that Randal Kolo Muani can then officially leave PSG?
Yeah, it could even be that Randal Kolo Muani is confirmed on his loan to Juventus before Kvaratskhelia is confirmed by PSG. That is a move that is pretty much ready to be made official. Kolo Muani has undergone his medical in Turin. I believe it was done in 2 parts. And there is no obligation to buy or no option to buy for Juve with PSG, but they are covering the entirety of his wages for the remainder of the season from the moment that he does sign on. So that is expected to be announced imminently and could possibly be announced before Kvaratskhelia.
What about Kyogo Furuhashi then? He's been linked with a move away from Celtic. Who wants him?
Yeah, in France, Rennes are looking to salvage their Ligue 1 status. They've made a couple of big signings already. Brice Samba, the former Nottingham Forest goalkeeper, has been signed from Lens. And you've also got Seko Fofana, who came back from Saudi Arabia, having shone with Lens in Ligue 1 a couple of years ago. They're already through the door. And Rennes looking to try to potentially pull off a move for Kyogo as well before the end of the transfer window. Obviously, a big decision to be made for Celtic, given that they're still in the Champions League and still have 2 games remaining, including one against Aston Villa. But there is hope in France that this is a move that could potentially go through and add to the growing contingent of Japanese talent in French football at the moment.
And just finally, Jonathan, a real shock last night in the French Cup involving Lyon.
Yeah, Bourgogne-Jallieu knocking them out on penalties. Fantastic stuff, this. A little bit of a local rivalry. 5th tier semi-professional side. Went 1-0 up, went 2-1 down, then equalised to 2-2. Goalkeeper heroics in the penalty shootout as well. So very much the magic of the cup still alive in France. And it was almost the same case for PSG as well. Nearly falling victim to Espeli, who actually play in the same league as Bourgogne-Jallieu. They ultimately ran out 4-2 winners, but there was a moment going into the final 10 minutes where a penalty shootout did look likely. So Lyon, the big losers there, and PSG getting off lightly this time.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Right, Manchester City will hold further talks with Eintracht Frankfurt today about a deal for Omar Marmoush, according to Sky in Germany. The clubs are yet to reach an agreement over the financial terms of the sale. Eintracht Frankfurt wants £67 million for the player. Now, Flex, Omar Marmoush looks like it's getting closer and closer, just the clubs need to agree. £67 million Eintracht Frankfurt want. And if City are spending that money on a player, surely he's not coming to sit on the bench.
You wouldn't think so. He's coming to also give City a much-needed sort of reignition, right, to kickstart their season, because they've been way below standards. We've spoken about the sums of money potentially, Dave, that they are going to be spending in this window. And Omar Marmoush, with the type of season that he's having as well, he's having a season of his life. He's getting plenty of goals, plenty of assists, and he will want to come and contribute straight away. He spent a lot of time playing through the middle, but of course, there's Erling Haaland there. But a lot of support for him, I would say. He can easily play off the front. He can occupy both wing positions as well. He's really good in transitions, which will be interesting to see how he fits into Manchester City, because they don't turn the ball over a lot. They have the ball mainly. So that space to operate, almost like how he does at Eintracht Frankfurt, may not exist too often at Manchester City. But I think he gives them... He gives them options, and that's what they haven't had. It gives them a freshness with which Pep Guardiola has spoken about, really probably getting it wrong in the summer in terms of not freshening up that squad.
Yeah, we told you earlier that Vitor Hayes is expected to fly into the UK today to finalise his move to Manchester City. City have agreed a deal with Palmeiras worth £29.4 million for the 18-year-old centre-back. But Dave, City already have a lot of centre-backs, don't they? A lot of centre-backs that can play all across sort of the back line. So what does this mean for them?
They do have a lot of centre-backs, but I think all of the probably front-line 5, excluding Kyle Walker maybe, have had some real injury issues this season. Diaz, Ake, Stones, Akanji, Gvardiol have all had time out of the team because of injury. Simpson Putti has come in this season, and for him it's more of a breakthrough season really. But would he have got that opportunity if the other centre-backs had been fully fit for all of the season? Maybe not. I think this player is such a young player, but he has spent time playing at right back. He does offer a little bit of versatility. So do I think he's going to come in and take the place of Ruben Diaz? No. I think, and Tim Vickery has said also, he will need to physically develop as a person before he can really fulfil his potential in the Premier League. So I think he's one that could come in and play some minutes, but I don't think he's going to be used as a starting defender for Manchester City this season. That's not to say next season he might be able to play a role, and potentially at right back as well. If Guardiola wants to build up in a 3, then possibly he could play at right back and be involved in that. But I don't think it's going to spell the end of any of those defenders that I've spoken about there.
Now, with these additions, obviously, it's not just Marmoush, but Victor Hayes and Kujanov as well. Do you think, obviously, City, everyone's saying not in a title race anymore, but does this make them arguably favourites to get top 4 again?
You'd probably say so, yes. I think they've addressed their issues. And before Foden's brace this week, the second top scorer for City was Josko Gvardiol. Phil Foden's gone on a really good run. Aston Villa's grabbed his first goal of the season. He's then, from that point onwards, 4 goals. Only Mohamed Salah and Isak have scored more in that period. So, number one, the goal scoring's fixed with Phil Foden's form and Mamouche. Then you look defensively, City are ranked 13th in the Premier League for expected goals conceded. This is something that they top year after year. Under Guardiola, they top that. So you mentioned Victor Hayes, number one, will provide a lot of quality. And Kusanov as well is another player that will come into the team, really pacey, reads the game well. In terms of interceptions, averaging around 2.34 per 90. That ranks him in the top 1% of centre-backs in Europe's top 5 leagues. So they've solved both the problems defensively and offensively. They'll be a top 4 side for me this season.
But what about the midfield?
Yeah, that's the only question mark, really. City have looked vulnerable to the counter-attack and have conceded goals that they maybe usually wouldn't have done if, elephant in the room, Rodri was available. I think there is a gap in that midfield. I think we've seen a lack of dynamism and athleticism in that Manchester City midfield. We've all talked as well about Kevin De Bruyne and his ability to get back to the level that we've seen. Ilkay Gundogan hasn't shown the level that he previously showed at Manchester City. And I think there is a requirement for some freshness and younger legs in that midfield, and perhaps a little bit of versatility, someone that they can sign to come in, not just to compete with Rodri, but to play alongside him in a slightly different position. So I still think that's an area that they will be looking at.
Right, coming up, we've got Liverpool training live for you, plus we'll discuss Arsenal's need for a forward. Mikel Arteta says they are actively looking for a striker this window. Statman Dave, looking for a striker, but could the bigger issue here have actually been Saka's injury and not the injury to their striker, Gabriel Jesus?
I think so, yeah. You look at his goal contributions this season, 10 assists, 5 goals, really important for the Arsenal side, very creative. But also, I think you also look at Martin Ødegaard. We haven't had Saka and Ødegaard playing together in the Premier League as much as we did last season. Then you throw in Ben White. That was a massive part of how they broke teams down last season. But in fact, if you look at the pair of Ødegaard and Saka, not only the last season where they combined for the most shots together, but if you look at the stats we've got here, in the Premier League, they are unbeaten with the pair starting. All the numbers I've looked at improve with both of them in there. Goals scored, goals conceded, clean sheets, goal difference, points per game. So this combination is so important for Arsenal. And without Saka, now we're seeing a bit of a worse Arsenal from a creative perspective.
I mean, Dave, do they need those other wingers and those other attacking players to contribute perhaps just a little bit more than they have been?
I think so, but I think they've also struggled. We've talked about other teams struggling with injuries, but Arsenal have also struggled with injuries. You mentioned Ben White there, obviously Saka, Nwaneri, Jesus, long term now. And I think the other thing to think about is that Mikel Arteta is now starting to turn to players that probably don't have a long-term future at Arsenal. Raheem Sterling started, and the way his season has gone so far doesn't say to me that Arsenal are going to push the button and try and do that deal permanently. Kieran Tierney came on and played left wing. He's close to joining Celtic. Zinchenko coming off the bench, and he's probably open to be leaving the club as well, maybe this month or in the summer. So that's a problem when Arsenal are trying to turn to these players that maybe Arteta doesn't see as being there in the long term and being able to achieve the targets that they want with those players at the club. Having said all of that, they're on the same points at this point in the season as they were last season. So this whole sort of narrative that started to build that Arsenal is struggling a little bit, maybe not as bad as everyone is making out, because they can go on a run like they did last season in the second half of the year and really challenge for this title.
But that's the bit why I think Arsenal need to be as aggressive as they can in this window, because of course, yes, when the big headlines arrive when they're out of the Carabao Cup or half out of the Carabao Cup or out of the FA Cup, you could say, oh, season's over, they're not going to catch Liverpool, this, that and the other. But actually, like I said, they're 4 points behind Liverpool. Yes, Liverpool have a game in hand, but they can't afford to just look to the summer and just write this off. They've come too far to write this off. And yes, they may have not expected the injuries that they've had, but I just think they need to do everything they can to freshen up this squad, like when they brought in the likes of Trossard a window to ago to freshen up the squad. And he's still playing now to help get them over the line, to keep that hunt for the challenge of the Premier League going. Because if they throw it away, I think Arsenal fans have every right to sort of be aggrieved, to say we are still in the hunt for the two top honours in terms of the Champions League and the Premier League.
If their squad stays the same and they don't actually get to add a striker, which is obviously the position they desperately want, can they still go on and win the Premier League and compete in the Champions League, Statman Dave?
Yeah, for sure. And the big point that you made before, when I looked at the halfway point of the season, Arsenal picked up around 49 points last season, which is ridiculous. When I was looking at the records, that's very, very good. The unfortunate side of last season is Manchester City equalled it, and they were even as good. But you do look at the squad and you think, from a long-term perspective for Arsenal, the squad is in the perfect age. You know, 8 out of the 10 outfielders are between the ages of 22 and 26. That is great. You think only Gabriel and maybe Mikel Moreno, if you class them as the first choice, are outside of that. So this long-term plan that Arsenal are going through, they need to stick with it. I completely agree with you that, look, from a fan's perspective, that signing in January to get them the league title, because City are so bad this year compared to their own previous standards, this is the time. But also we're looking at Arsenal, probably the next 2 to 3 years, their key players are going to be at the peak.
Why do you think when you look at, obviously, their defence, they've spent so much money on defenders and they look like they're going to go and spend a bit of money on Zubimendi. Why do you feel like they need a midfielder as well? Is that a position that they should be focusing on?
Again, this is why I think if you're an Arsenal fan, you might be a little bit annoyed at the fact, again, you're crying out for this striker, but then there's loads of reports saying in the summer you're going to get Martin Zubimendi.
not a bad player,
which is obviously he's not a bad player, absolutely. What do they need now. It's about now. You can't afford to throw away another season challenging. Arsenal fans want to see them be aggressive and go for the title now. So yes, Martin Zubimendi is a fantastic player. We've got Mikel Merino in from Sociedad. He's come in. He's looked okay. Is he better than Partey? No. Is he better than Rice? No, not for me. So has he elevated their midfield? Probably not. So in the time when they've needed to chase down Manchester City and close that gap, like I said, they came back with Raheem Sterling, who struggled, Calafiori, who Miles Lewis-Skelly now is leapfrogged him, and Mikel Merino. So, yeah, I can see why they want a striker.
Well, it's Liverpool that Arsenal are currently chasing in the race for the Premier League title, and they are currently training ahead of travelling to Brentford this weekend. Watching for us is Vinny O'Connor. Vinny, I'm sure obviously you're watching training, but all the talk is still going to be around the futures of those three big players.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day when I can turn up here and not be speaking about Trent Alexander-Arnold, Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk's future. But of course, there's been those reports out today as well, isn't there, about a supposed verbal agreement between Trent Alexander-Arnold and Real Madrid. And what I'm being told here from a Liverpool perspective, well, that doesn't necessarily make any sense, because obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold at this point in time is free to sign a pre-contract agreement anyway. So what would be the point of a verbal agreement? But anyway, let's get to training, because I'll step out the way. We can see exactly what's going on behind me at the moment, because this is a Liverpool squad now that is obviously facing a challenge again in the title race. I don't think they ever felt anything else, to be fair. After the draw at Forest, their advantage is now to 4 points following Arsenal's victory in the North London derby. Obviously, since the thrashing of West Ham, it's just one win in the last 5 for Liverpool in all competitions. That was against Accrington in the Cup. One defeat in that time, obviously away against Spurs in the first leg of the League Cup semi-final. And then there was the draws against United at home, and obviously last night Tuesday night against Forest as well. Positives at the moment, albeit he's not out there at the minute, Diogo Jota, and what we're hearing is that Jota is inside just doing individual work at the moment. I don't think too much of a surprise, given they're being pretty careful with him after his injury issues this season. But back to fitness and scoring with his first touch against Nottingham Forest the other night. That's 2 in his last 2, having scored against Accrington. His goal against Forest was only his second Premier League goal since mid-December, and that was the 2-2 at home to Fulham, where he again rescued a point. I wonder how crucial those points could be come May as well. 3 of his last 4 Premier League goals, in fact, have come in tight affairs. He got the winner, obviously, against Palace earlier this season as well. An indication, I think, of the importance of having him fit at the moment. Also handy when the goals are being shared around across that forward line. Obviously, Mo Salah hasn't scored in his last 2 against Spurs and Forest. That's the second longest run without a goal for Mo Salah so far this season, having gone 3 games without a goal from mid to late September. It's 21 goals all competitions this season still for Mo Salah. Diaz hasn't scored in his last 3, 12 for the season for him, 3 in his last 2. Gakpo, of course, we know, has been weighing in with the goals again this season as well, but not scored in his last 2 after a run of 3 in 3 Premier League games against Leicester, West Ham and Manchester United. So given that firepower, I think maybe it's a bit of a surprise to see Liverpool scoring just 3 in their last 3 against Premier League opposition, including the blank, of course, in the League Cup against Spurs. I haven't even mentioned Darwin Núñez. He was suspended against Nottingham Forest. So again, I think maybe one of the conundrums that Arne Slot will be looking to solve just now is just getting that Liverpool forward line firing back on all cylinders once again. Whilst at the back, we know there's been the odd issue here and there. Joe Gomez still not out there, still not ready to join in with the group as he recovers from injury as well. He's been out since the 5-0 win at West Ham with that hamstring problem. As I say, still not training with the team. But looking at that back line as a whole, we've seen how they've been injury hit throughout this season, with Tsimikas being out for a while, Conor Bradley as well, Ibrahima Konate, and maybe Arne Slot not being able to rotate that back line as much as he would have liked, certainly given the opportunity to rest the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, the likes of Andy Robertson as well. And of course, not just the defenders that have been injured, there's been that injury to Alisson. He's kept just 2 clean sheets since his return. That was away at Girona in the Champions League, his first game back, and that 5-0 thrashing of West Ham as well. Liverpool have actually conceded 10 in the last 8 games that he's played since recovering from injury as well. I mentioned the fact that the back line has been disrupted by injury. Just wonder as well whether Konate is just taking a little time to get back up to speed. Only 3 games into his comeback now after being out for a month, and Liverpool conceding 4 goals in those games as well. It all means it's getting a little bit tighter at the top of the Premier League, as I mentioned, and Arsenal really issuing a bit of a challenge now. Of course, Liverpool still have that game in hand, which is the Merseyside derby, which will be played on February the 12th. But next up, it is Brentford, and the spirits certainly out at training at the moment seem in fine fettle anyway, as they accept, you would think, that challenge from Arsenal as they look to close in on the Premier League title.
Thank you very much, Vinny. Right to Newcastle now, who are on an incredible run as they equalled their club record of 9 straight wins in all competitions with victory over Wolves. And who else? Alexander Isak scored once again. It's now 8 in a row in the league. Statman Dave, is there any debate who's the best, most informed striker in the league right now?
Inform, no. Sorry, inform, yes. No, I got myself completely wrong.
Yeah.
The stats have fallen off. But obviously, Erling Haaland, for me, is a better goal scorer.
Yeah.
What I like about Isak, though, is his overall game. When you look at all the important numbers that you want around building a centre forward in terms of his goal contributions, number 1 in the Premier League among strikers, we are not including Mohamed Salah in this. Just like, number 9s only. But in terms of that, you want a player that creates things, the shot-creating actions, the chances created, the assists as well. He personally has improved. In the previous 2 seasons, 3 assists. This season, 5, which is fantastic. In terms of carrying as well, improvements in those numbers, progressive passes received, a stat that I like to look at centre-forwards, very, very important. But even more than that, 6 game-winning goals this season in the Premier League. Top of the league with Christopher Wood, who we're all talking about. And even further than that, 54% of goals Newcastle have scored this season, he's been involved with. The stats don't lie. He is the most complete, informed striker this season.
Agreed?
He's done me there with the graphics, so that's fine.
Not really much you can say there.
Yeah, pretty good, isn't he?
Yeah, he's all right. He's all right, isn't he? Right, anyway, Good Morning Transfers is back at the same time tomorrow morning. You can catch that at 9 a.m. You can join us at 12 p.m. for Transfer Talk tomorrow. Pep Guardiola will be live. And for a full roundup of all the day's news, you can catch the Transfer Show tonight at 5 and 7 p.m. Thank you very much to Flex, Statman Dave and Dave Reed. Coming up, it's Lunchtime Live. Natasha Jonas and Lauren Price will join us on set ahead of their fight in March.